guys, it's Brian. Welcome back to the channel. So in my previous video, I was talking about the misdirection of Harley Davidson and how Harley Davidson could very easily get lost in trying to market to two different demographics and sort of get lost in what the market's looking for. This week absolutely changed my thought process on Harley Davidson's marketing. And I kind of wanted to lay this out. I've enjoyed doing these talking heads. This is something different for me. It kind of aligns with my interview series, but I really like doing these because the feedback that I've gotten from these videos has been solid. And I think that there's an opportunity in these videos for us to talk about this. So if you're new here, I'm brythebiker. We do interview series. I do installs and now talking head videos, apparently, and travel videos. So I wanted to talk about Harley Davidson's balance between trying to deal with the new Harley Davidson and the old Harley Davidson. Now, a lot of us, including myself, have been very critical that Harley Davidson has failed to adapt to technology. I ride a 2020 Road Glide Limited. Keep that in mind. I'm an IT guy. I like technology. So my push to Harley Davidson is the technology and the touring line. And I will admit, I've only had two Harley Davidsons, so I'm not one of these people that's, a die in the, I don't bleed Harley Davidson, although, however, I will tell you this is the best bike I have ever owned, and I am a fan of Harley Davidson now. So let's talk about why I think about this. So Harley, like I said, is clearly pushing the CVO that you can tell that that's coming as being the pinnacle of their technology. Now, obviously, not everyone's going to go out and buy a $55,000, $60,000 bike by the time it's out the door. So we know that those technologies are going to trickle down to the more affordable brands. So that's going to go down, the affordable model. So that's going to go down to the limiteds. It's going to go down to, more of the smaller touring bikes with the technology that they're going to bring to bear. And mostly with that, I'm talking about the touch screen and sort of the design changes. But what's interesting is this week, Harley Davidson has released two updates. They've updated come out with the Fast Johnny collection, which is going to be a throwback to the original 1920s and how Hog got its name. And I thought that was an interesting story in doing some research. And I have notes here, so I apologize if I'm looking away. But Johnny Weiser was the person that was part of an organization called the Wrecking Crew in the 1920s, a race team. And when he would win, he would ride around with this little hog perched on his gas tank. That became his thing. That was what he did when he won a race. And that's sort of what adopted the name Hog to Harley Davidson. Thought that was pretty cool. Didn't know about that till I researched it. So that's 1920s. So Fast Johnny and that whole Hog branding was adopted in the 1920s. So stick with me because we're going down a rabbit hole here, but it's an interesting point. So in the 1920s, that would have been my grandparents' generation. So my grandparents' generation experienced that. They experienced the birth of Harley Davidson. So now, in the same week, Harley Davidson has come out with the Electra Glide Highway King. So that is the quintessential Elvis bike, right? That was the original Icon Series bike that came out. That was the blue and white Electra Glide. That was the bike that we've famously seen Elvis on, even in that color scheme. And when I first thought about it, when I first saw it, I was like, well, this is kind of dumb, right? This is just another Harley with a different color scheme. And it is. I mean, at the end of the day, they've rebranded. They've come up with a different name for the bike. They've thrown different paint on the same model, and they've given it a different name. But then something dawned on me. One of the things that the millennials have attached themselves to is the older generation. It's in their styling. It's like I said, it's in their clothing. It's in their hairstyling. And that generation kind of wants to attach itself to its legacy, its parents and its grandparents. And that was the interesting thing that I saw in this, right? So the Fast Johnny collection goes way back to your grandparents. That is an iconic moment for Harley Davidson. So by doing that and then bringing the Icon series out, they're giving the newer generation of riders an opportunity to attach themselves to the legacy of the generation before them. Problem with that, though, is the cost, right? Because let's face it, most dealers are not going to sell these bikes for MSRP. I've seen some of these bikes go for almost double of what they are in price, but I can kind of see what Harley Davidson's doing, because the collectors are going to want to have that bike of yesteryear, but they could ride it to a bike show and not have to worry about the maintenance. Now, these are going to be very limited edition bikes, so they're not going to be a bike that you're going to see a lot of. I think I've seen one Icon on the road at a bike night of all things, which would make sense. It's a bit of a bragging bike. But this does allow the older generation of rider that Harley's still trying desperately to stay attached to, because let's face it, that's their cash cow. They could buy the bike that their father owned or their grandparents owned, or the bike that has that branding attached to it. So from a historical standpoint, I think Harley Davidson has done something interesting, because I had said in my other previous video, Harley is very much struggling to stay in touch with the new rider and the old rider, because let's face it, a rider with more income, which is going to be an older rider, is what they're going for as a premium brand. But they need to find a way to attract new people into the brand. And even if that's just in a collector sense, it's still a win. And I'm very curious to get your feedback on this, because I think that it's interesting. I don't know that it's the best move as far as being able to push a ton of bikes, especially when there's only 1,500 of them. But that purple magenta white Elvis bike really got me thinking. I mean, that's a cool bike. If I were to buy a second bike and I wanted a throwback bike, I really like that bike. That is a bike that the generation before me would have owned, right? That could have been my father's bike. And as Gen X becomes older, and Gen X now is starting to replace the baby boomers in that market of disposable income, this might not be a bad move for Harley Davidson. Could we see a model like this that's a throwback, but not a limited edition throwback? So maybe it's limited edition, but the numbers are a lot higher, like it's 5,000. Because if you look at the Fast Johnny move, I thought it was interesting because you're putting it on performance bikes, but you're attaching that branding to the person that put the term hog into Harley Davidson. So clearly their marketing has figured out something, right? We're going to attach these icons, which is the Icon series. We're going to attach these names to newer bikes. So when I talk to my parents or someone talks to their dad's like, oh yeah, I used to have that bike. Or, Fast Johnny was a guy that your grandfather saw riding. It gives a way to bridge that generational gap. And I think it's interesting because come the 120th anniversary, when Harley does release the CVOs, there is going to be a huge, huge push for that technology. The touring line as we know it is going to change. It's going to become more advanced, and we're going to have a lot more technology in it. That to me is the push to get Gen Xers ready and put them into touring models. Now, the Icon selection is going to be more for grabbing those boomers that are still riding, or the riders with disposable income that would love to attach themselves to that generation of riders behind them. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was a very interesting marketing move from Harley Davidson. I mean, we're very critical of Harley Davidson, and I know I have been, as not really wanting to keep up on technology. Well, they threw the CVO out there, and while the CVO is not a bike for everybody, that technology is going to trickle down. So this is sort of going to be the pinnacle bike, and then next year or the year after, we're going to start seeing that technology in standard touring bikes. So to me, I really thought this was an interesting move, and especially they did this right after the CVO hype. So they put the CVO hype out, and then they said, hey, but we're still in touch with those riders that still want to attach themselves to the Harley Davidson of old. I just thought it was really interesting. Weather's been shitty here, so I just wanted to do a quick talking head. Hadn't had a chance to get out and do some installs this week. But I thought this was really interesting. It was kind of on my mind. I just wanted to float it out there and see what you guys think. I really do like doing these opinion pieces and doing the research. I think there's a lot of value in that. And I think it's a good opportunity to just start some discussion in the comments. So guys, I'd be really interested to know what you think about this. Is this a good move for Harley Davidson, or is this just a money grab? I'd be curious to see what you guys think. As always, I hope you're doing well. And guys, thank you so much for watching this video. And as always, please remember you're not alone. Thanks for watching.